What is up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Culture FC, the weekly soccer show where we discuss all culturally relevant soccer topics, lifestyle, fashion, music, politics, anything exciting happening off the pitch, none of the stuff really happening on it. I'm Alan, and I'm here joined by Louie and Brendan, co-hosts for the day, and always. But this week, we discussed a little recap of the World Cup. It was an action-packed World Cup, so many exciting things happening off the pitch, both culturally, politically, everything. It was a really great World Cup. And so we wanted to just go over some things like VAR, how we felt it did, refereeing, if the Russian World Cup was run to the standards that we thought that it was going to be run at, and a whole host of different things. So as always, please leave us that 5-star review, share the podcast. It really helps us rank on everything, iTunes, now Spotify. Go check us out on Spotify because we are now there. Google Play, that's another podcasting place where you can find us. YouTube, if you watch the video version, give us a thumbs up, subscribe so you can see our pretty faces all the time, and that's about it. You can follow us on our Instagram account at culturef.c. A lot of background, behind the scenes stuff that we don't really talk about show in the actual show, so check us out there. As always, if you have any comments, questions, concerns, leave us a message, email, comment on Instagram, DM us, video, find us. You can find us anywhere. So, yeah, that's it of me asking you for stuff, and let's get right into the episode.
Alrighty, guys, let's dive into this week's newsworthy topics. First one, still a little World Cup related, or actually definitely World Cup related. News came out yesterday that N'Golo Kante's brother actually passed away about a few weeks right before the start of the World Cup. This is kind of crazy. If you ever seen any pictures or videos of N'Golo Kante on the internet, he looks like the happiest man on the planet. Yeah. Super nice, just like overall seems like the world's nicest dude. And not only did he have himself an absolutely phenomenal World Cup, he won it with France, and to have to do it through all that kind of heartache and having to, deal with the passing of a loved one while still having to be able to produce at the world's biggest stage is just crazy. So props to him, condolences to him. I feel for him and his family. It must be a very weird time in his household.
Yeah, to both celebrate and grieve at the same time.
Yeah. I can't even imagine what that would be like to have to do. Like, okay, let's be happy for N'Golo and also very, sad and grieve for his brother.
It also is, I've been seeing a lot of kind of the France celebrations, and they really made an effort in like doing the chants for him and singing for him. So I wonder if that kind of plays a role in it, and just trying the France teammates that he has, trying to lift his spirits, probably knowing that has gone through this, which kind of connecting the dots makes it make a lot more sense, even though I'm sure they would have been cheering for him regardless. I'm sure everyone is very happy for him, and although such a sad time, I'm glad that he's gotten some type of joy out of this whole kind of crazy month it's been for him.
Yeah, I would never know how that would feel to have to play at such a high stage.
It's that same situation with John Obi Mikel, right?
Exactly.
That was that one topic.
Yeah, the one topic I had. But you gotta, do we think it almost motivated him more?
Yeah. I'd like to think so, right?
Yeah. I hate to make it be like, do you think that his brother passing made him more motivated? I mean, it's a sombering thing, but I'm sure it had to have played a role.
I mean, especially for soccer players who tend to have a lot of superstition and just have a lot of emotional things connect to them. Some people might let it bring them down. Others might use fuel to the fire, right? So I would hope so. I think that if it didn't, he still played for. I mean, he was in discussion for player of the World Cup in my mind, just as a kind of underrated player and doing his job correctly and being sort of the backbone of that midfield. So yeah, it's sad, but it's cool to see him through that horrible situation still being the perky, freaking smiley ass dude. I mean, so many pictures of him in training were just him still smiling, no sadness, nothing. So that's good. I like seeing that. But moving on, I actually have a kind of crazy story that I couldn't believe, but it's real. So just sit back for I'm gonna need a few minutes for this. But so apparently, I'm actually gonna ask you this question first. Have you ever heard of Tinotenda Chibaro?
Excuse me?
Have you heard of? Is a player. Is a guy.
Oh, okay.
Player. Tinotendo Chibawe.
No.
Nope. Okay. Well, I wouldn't expect you to. But apparently, he is a Zimbabwean player who has scammed his way into playing professional soccer for a Serbian football team.
No way.
So this guy, the article is long, so I'm going to try to just break it up as simply as possible. But so apparently this guy has been pulling a scam now for since like 2012. He came out, or he's playing for a Serbian team. Allegedly, he played for Man City's academy, under 21s, was the captain, was their best player. But you look back in Manchester City's academy history, no evidence of him ever playing for them, right? So then he allegedly also played for an Italian team, a small Italian team, or we wouldn't really know them. Again, no reference of him being on the team. But then there are articles of his agent saying, like, yeah, like he's been the best player for Manchester City's academy. And this was articles in 2012. So he's been pulling this long con and has eventually now ended up playing professional football. And there are pictures of him. I'm going to show you guys, but we'll link him in the thing. There's pictures of this guy, alleged player, and like him playing for Man City's academy. But if you look in the picture in the background, there's a guy with like a man purse. So it's just like a pickup soccer game where they were wearing Man City jerseys, right? So this guy pulled one of the world's greatest cons in the world of sport. And like, okay, it's pretty like not common, but this has happened before, like way back in the 90s when you couldn't know that like you couldn't just YouTube a player and see his stats.
Yeah, you'd only have the newspapers and stuff
you just
to
had
rely
a new
on.
picture. So
but then you would reach out to the club and be like, yo.
Well, I saw this other story related but unrelated. This guy in Brazil actually in the 80s, I think, got a 10-year contract with the soccer team and did not play one game because he would fake an injury or fake something. He had never played a professional game of soccer in his life before signing his contract. Can you believe that?
That's hilarious.
So this guy is now playing in Serbia and has
Is he any good at all?
No, I don't know. Like it's Serbia, so like we don't really.
Did he say how much he got or anything?
No, I don't know. But yeah, so I don't know. I don't have any other words to say, but it's just crazy.
I'm at a loss for words of how to react to this. Like, on the one hand, like, kudos to him for creating this very long, drawn-out con that ended up getting him to be a professional soccer player. Like, the three of us can all sit here and agree, being a professional soccer player is a dream of all of ours and most children in the world. So it's just like, awesome. But at the same time, like, that's just amazing. Like,
when do you think the turning point for him was when he was like, all right, I'm not good enough to do this, but like maybe I can just scam my way to the top?
I don't know. I mean, 2012, man, he's been doing this for
6 years that you've been planning out this con, and you finally actually win with it.
And it was great because they were like Twitter accounts that were like Zimbabwean Twitter accounts, and I'm gonna read this. Proudly Zimbabwean news. Tinotenda Chivaro has been named captain of Manchester City's under 12-21 side. Keep that flag flying high. A tweet from 2012. Like,
so everyone was in on
this thing has been going on for so long.
So my thing is either he built up these news sources or he paid someone or he had a friend. Because like in my head, what would be really cool would be if like this man created several different Twitter accounts, all with like, Zimbabwe news and this other thing. And then he just tweets back and forth at himself, having a conversation between five people.
He also has a Wikipedia page. Like he has things all about him. So
dude, that is the ultimate scheme.
And also Googling his name, you can also apparently find him on Transfer Market, which is like a like a website you go on to like see player stats. He's on it.
My
no
God.
Picture, but he's on it.
Okay,
Wow.
so but going forward though, I really hope it works out. Like I
too.
hope
Imagine if he's just a phenom. He's like, well, I would, no one ever noticed me, but I had to skim my way. But I'm gonna show him I'm worth it. Don't you think? Also, couldn't you just spend that time scheming, like just really practicing and like? I guess like. I know it's hard,
That's a very
but
good point. You have 6 years. In 6 years, if you work every single day, you could probably get very good at something.
yeah,
Maybe enough to play like third division somewhere. But
yeah,
like,
somewhere.
That's very interesting that he took this route.
Yeah, we always gotta see like if you're gonna cheat and scheme your way to the top, like, you know, how much effort is it gonna take to do that?
Or hey, if you're gonna do it, at least do it right, like this guy.
Right.
I'm looking, not to drag this out anymore, but he apparently played for Killy FC. And there's a forum for Killy FC fans, and these guys are just discussing about how they've never seen him playing. And there's the same pictures of him that we just saw, but like, it's just so absurd.
That is so funny.
Oh, what a life this guy's lived.
Oh
But
my God.
yeah, I do hope he does well. Go for it, man.
Definitely gonna keep tabs on him because I need to know in about a year or two, like if he makes
He
it.
panned out. Yeah.
But all right, moving on to our third and final topic. This one's pretty funny too. Arsenal got cheated by a Chinese con man. And I need to explain this story a little bit better. So, in April 2018, Arsenal announced a global agreement with the world's best-selling electric vehicle manufacturer, BYD Auto, to become the club's official car and bus partner. Now it's emerged that Arsenal's deal with them was not signed with the actual company. So basically, someone acting as if he worked and was high up at BYD signed it was like I don't know how long the agreement was, but basically this person had been doing this for about 3 years of like scamming different people. And the best part is that Arsenal did promo pictures with BYD. There's like promos with the cars, the players in front of them. They had a jersey that said BYD on it with a number, you know, like those promotional things that clubs do. And turns out when they released all of these images, BYD probably contacted them and was like, hey, what are you talking about? We've never come to an agreement with your club and like all this. And then Arsenal is just like, wait a second. We had all these agreements in place. And turns out someone at the Chinese police organization had been like stamping these deals to make them like notarized so that they're like legitimate documents. But turns out they were fake. So this person must have like either paid someone at this organization or they worked at this organization and like faked these things because it's just crazy.
Wow, dude. That's astonishing. It's also astonishing that teams can get scammed. Like, this reminds me of the story, I think, from, I want to say last year. Stefan de Vrij, when he got signed by Lazio or something, they ended up paying some scammers like the last installment of his transfer fee just because these guys emailed them and were like, yeah, our agent changed our bank account. And then they paid the last installment of his transfer fee to scammers. How does this happen where you have like no formal line of communication?
Way too trustworthy.
That is, and you think like, these are big clubs. They should be doing their research on all of this. Like, they shouldn't be duped this easily. But, my God, this is hilarious. Like, it says
we're playing with a lot of money here. Should we check it? Nah, he's good.
Whatever, just throw it.
The car maker, BYD, reported that the police reported to the police a forged company seal. That someone literally made a seal of the company, pretended to be them or whatever. Like, how? Like, it's just awesome. Like, the fact that this could happen.
Wow. Yeah, it's a little concerning, but yeah. It's
definitely
funny.
Concerning.
It's definitely funny that's happening to Arsenal as well. Like,
I was gonna say
all
like
the clubs that it could have happened to.
It pretty much had to be Arsenal. Chalk up another L to the good old Arsenal.
Yeah. Wow.
Yep.
That's good. I hope that clubs learn their lesson, but who knows? We'll just keep getting better.
It reminds me of like the Nigerian princes who used to send emails, like just like people trying to scam you through the internet. Like, you should look at these things.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, come on, man. Don't just trust an email. Like, to have a Skype session with the person and like, or sign legal documents with the representatives of the people.
So now that I'm thinking about it, if it was just like one guy conning them, like, don't you think that, like, do you think that he like paid people to be his entourage to like show up at Arsenal to sign this?
Must have. Be like, hey, come do this thing with me. We'll split a little bit of the sum. Yeah.
Yeah, because like Arsenal, like they, you would think like, okay, we're not going to sign this until we meet people in person and we have these like formal business meetings. And so this dude must have been so thorough too to like hire a team to show up at like Arsenal's offices or whatever and go, here you go, we're signing this.
Yeah. Well, man, I was just I was watching a show about like con men and stuff, and apparently I thought it was all
trying to con your way into something, bro.
No, but it's just like learning how the art of the con, and I was just like, oh, this can't be real, but apparently it's very much real. It's the real thing.
I love people.
Yeah, that's good. Power to you, con men.
Oh man. But all right, guys, moving along. The most action-packed World Cup in recent memory
Big
has come to a
facts.
close. 64 games, only one scoreless draw in the whole tournament.
Yep.
And it is finally over. France crowned world champion for the second time in their history. And it was phenomenal. I loved almost every moment of this World Cup, minus one game. Belgium and Brazil will still upset me. But other than that, I think the tournament was phenomenal.
Yeah, man, it was like midway through the tournament, kind of talking to people, talking to friends, people that didn't really know it, but had been following it. I mean, I think hands down probably been the best World Cup to watch if you're not supporting a specific club. Even I, who support Brazil, still say that this has been the best World Cup that I've ever seen, just in terms of energy, excitement, goals, obviously not having these drawless, these scoreless games. It's been phenomenal.
Yeah, and like I think it's very interesting that you said like even from a neutral standpoint you could have enjoyed it, and it's like for people in America who maybe because the U.S. wasn't in it, you were kind of like, oh, I don't have a team to pull for. I honestly don't even think you needed a team to pull for.
Yeah.
Just watch every game.
There were so many kind of underdog stories. It seemed like there wasn't just one story of one team that had something special. It seemed like there were a collective few teams that, even if no one thought they had a good run, they still pulled out a game or two where they like did something a little special, and it kind of really excited people around the world.
Yeah, I mean, it's like every national team had a storyline to follow, whether it was a specific player in the example of like Mohamed Salah in Egypt, or if it was like the fact that Panama scored their first goal in a World Cup ever, or Iceland, and basically every team that made it to the tournament had a storyline, and there was a reason that they were there, and there was a reason for you to watch, and so. Basically, we just wanted to take today's episode and kind of recap a little bit of the World Cup because we wanted to kind of go back to some of the topics we talked about in our World Cup preview episode and kind of see how things have shaken up and just one more time appreciate the World Cup for what it was.
Yeah. So I think first off, we should start off with is a little bit of an apology.
Just a little bit.
To Russia and to the Russian people. We thought coming into the World Cup that there was going to be a shit ton of controversy, issues, violence, etc. But from what we have seen, that has absolutely not been the case. From players' accounts, fans' accounts, everyone who has gone to Russia and experienced Russia has said that it has been amazing, accommodating, friendly. Everything from videos there looked crazy, like in a good way, in a positive way, celebrations. So I think we have a big sorry to say to the Russians, but.
Yeah, pretty much. There were, aside from those first few incidents that we reported, there was nothing major that happened. There was no really organized violence. Nope. There was honestly nothing. Russia did such a good job of keeping the lid on pretty much everything and just making sure that all of the people coming in and out of their country for the tournament were safe, secure. It was just a fun. This was weirdly enough almost an exemplary World Cup. Yeah. Because even in the case
everything ran smoothly, man.
And even in the case of Brazil, where there were national protests weeks before the tournament kicked off, in Russia, there was nothing.
Yeah, that's true.
They literally they made sure everything worked without a hitch. All of the stadiums looked phenomenal. Yeah. Everything looked great, and there was no issues.
And I will say I've seen videos of people protesting, like making some political statements, and I thought, damn, these cops are about to beat the shit out of this guy or doing something crazy. But pretty peaceful, like. They were just passively kind of telling him, hey, man, you can't do this, blah, blah, blah. But no violence, nothing crazy. I mean, I don't know what happened behind closed doors. I can't say anything. But from outside looking in, it looked like it was a hell of a time.
Yeah, we apologize.
It's such a sad.
Normally we like to give people the benefit of the doubt, but we were straight up just like, oh, Russia, it's going to be bad.
Yeah.
It turned out to be.
No, I mean, I think that we had the right to believe that it wasn't going to be great.
And we weren't the only ones. If you could peruse the internet and see everybody talking about this. It wasn't just our opinions, and it was a little bit of everybody kind of looking at it and going, wow, this is might end up being a shit show. So, kudos to you, Russia, and to FIFA for actually putting on another phenomenal tournament.
And I guess looking at it, you can kind of see like the Russian government may have wanted it to be like, hey, we're not bad, right? Show the world that they are. I mean, it's the world stage, not only for the sport, but of just all the political and cultural implications that a World Cup has that we've discussed millions and millions of times. I'm now looking back now, right? Hindsight is 2020. It does make sense that they would want this World Cup to run smoothly and be kind of the most well-run World Cups to date.
Yeah. Especially because this will hopefully take off some of the pressure that they've been under for the past, I don't know, however many years.
Yeah.
Like this definitely makes sense as to why they would want this to be a giant PR statement for them. Because it's like, if this tournament goes off without a hitch and everybody has an amazing time and everybody loves it, then the world's gonna kind of get off their backs for a second, which does kind of scare me.
Yeah.
But
and I mean, this does tie into the episode we had in discussing sort of the issues with Russia and if we should be supporting it, right? Them running it so well and being so kind of exemplary in the way that the World Cup is run, it did overshadow the fact that there are still bad things happening there, right? We can't overlook that, and there are certain issues that will not be dealt with now because of how well it was run. So that's, I mean, we can say that it was run well, but there are still issues in Russia, that, as every country has. But yeah, I mean, I think from a footballing standpoint, I can't complain about what's happened in Russia.
definitely.
And even on a functional standpoint, remember when they had the Olympics in Sochi and there were so many complaints about all the athletes showing pictures of the rooms and stuff and like the food they'd get, and like you didn't see a lick of that from any soccer
Everything
player.
super nice.
If anything, you saw the cool things like Japan writing thank you in Russian and leaving their clean locker room. So
for sure, I think they were trying to make up for a lot of issues that they've encountered. So it was cool.
Yeah, I think the Sochi point is a major point because I remember in 2016
we were like, damn, really? You're going to host something like this and not take the time? But now it's like, wow, we don't even think twice about it. Like you don't even tend to think about Sochi. Like,
they did a good job of erasing that from public memory, which is good because it was pretty bad. People were all up in arms against Russia during it because they want the same calls that we'd made for it to be stripped from Russia. People were wanting to strip the Olympics from Russia too. And then when people got there and they were, reporters reporting on where they were staying, it was absurd. So, thankfully nothing happened from a footballing standpoint. The Russia World Cup was amazing. And I'm pleasantly surprised.
Absolutely. And kind of keeping in line with saying sorry, I think we have to apologize to VAR as well. This not real person or thing, but I think we have to say sorry to VAR, and because we were hypercritical of VAR in previous episodes as well, how it would work. We hadn't seen it working well in other examples, right? So I think this World Cup, bar some instances, but I don't necessarily think it was VAR's fault, and we can discuss that a little bit more. But I think VAR was pretty good.
Yeah, from my biggest points on VAR were always like the fact that it was going to disrupt the game, because it would take a lot more time, and it would just kind of ruin the flow of the game. That was my main complaint. But luckily during this World Cup, they did show that you can have VAR and it can be a quick, seamless instance where it's used and applied. But at the same time, I'm not sure if I'm 100% ready to overturn my thoughts on VAR, because as we saw in the World Cup final, that handball for Perisic, it's very, very on the line for me, where I don't think it was a clear penalty, but I also can see why it was given as a penalty. And that has always kind of been the thing too with VAR, where it's like, because we as humans created this game, there's always going to be that human error because there's a ref. And VAR can only be used at the main center ref's discretion. And so, there still are those instances and rules in soccer where it's up to interpretation. Right. Like what is an intentional handball in the box? Some people argue that Perisic's hand was just following the natural movement of his body because he jumped up, and as his body was coming down back to earth, his arms followed, because that's kind of just how your body works. And so his hand wasn't far away from his body. He didn't do it to touch the ball. And there definitely was his defender was on his back, so he knew that if he didn't hit it, someone else was going to clear it. But at the same time, his hand was relatively away from his body, and it was in a sort of unnatural position in a way. So all I'm trying to say is that I think that overall, I liked the use of VAR in the World Cup, but I still think that refs need to be we shouldn't be putting all of our focus on bettering VAR. We should be putting all of our focus on bettering the refereeing. I have some issues with the refereeing of this World Cup because I think that there were some instances that there were some games that I watched that the refereeing was piss poor. And VAR isn't going to fix shitty refereeing. It's going to make good referees better.
VAR is a tool, right?
VAR is a
At
tool.
the end of the day, regardless of whether we like it or not, it's up to the referee to use a tool when necessary. I think a lot of the instances, and even the one you spoke about in the final, it's not VAR's fault. It's the referee having to know, when do I use this tool? When is it appropriate for me to look back at this? And knowing the instances when it's appropriate, right? You're 100%. I agree totally with you that it is still refereeing that runs the game in that sense, and kind of the referees can't fall back on that. It's not a tool to fall back on. They still have to be on point and make the correct decisions. Because even on that call, you saw the ref left the booth, the VAR booth, took 3 steps away from the thing, went back. So he wasn't totally sure on the decision initially, right? So that doesn't set a good picture for me. If even when you're going back to that tool that's supposed to help you, you're not sure. It shows me a ref that's undecisive. I think that 100% we still needs to be a focus on training the referees to make correct calls when they need to be made.
Another positive takeaway from VAR is now players don't run up to the ref and be like, "Yo, dude, what the fuck? Like, come on!"
Yeah.
Now they're just running up to the ref and being like, "Yo,
Yeah,
come on!"
Yeah, that was a cool thing to see.
It's
Like,
like,
hey man, go actually check this and see what happened, which is cool because it's a video evidence. Like, dude, you can't ignore this now.
Right, which I love, because before you'd have players complaining, and there was nothing that the ref could do because he's playing on just his memory, right? And as humans, we all perceive things differently. Sometimes we remember things in a different way than other people. And so before, the ref had to just kind of like really think hard, and now he has something to look at. The way I equate it to is that the same way that yellow cards and red cards are a tool to control the game and to help it flow better, that's what VAR is. So
Right.
I think that overall, the World Cup proved to me that VAR can be very, very effective, and it should be implemented as long as we're training our refs really, really well to use it appropriately.
Yeah, and it did add some excitement to the sport as well, right? I think it was group stages had like 20 PK goals or something, right? And sometimes that could have played a major role in there being no 0-0 games.
Yeah,
right?
definitely.
That's a super exciting feature that sure could some of them been called off, whatever it may be, but it adds that kind of extra layer of goals to the game that I think a lot of, especially American culture, likes to see goals, high-scoring games. It definitely adds to that factor of the game.
Yeah. So yeah, overall though, I was, while I'm warming up to VAR, it's just it's a big change for the sport. Yeah. I'm warming up. I'm not gonna go.
I still think it's not totally clear when VAR should or should not be used, because the rule is like if it's a clear and obvious error.
Yep.
Or I think it's clear and obvious error. That's when you use VAR.
Yeah.
Right. So for a lot of the instances, it's like, was this clear and obvious? Was it? It has to be a total consensus, and it's up. That's again, it's so hard because all of it is up to interpretation of the referee.
Right.
So if we're considering it from that perspective, like no real tool will ever work unless we have some freaking robot that's like watching the game perfectly and knows all the rules and whatever. But yeah, I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah, overall, I guess I am
I'm just not as angry with it as I was before.
Yeah, I'm like a little more pro VAR than I was before, but
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily 100% on that like bandwagon of let's put VAR everywhere.
Yeah, I agree. I think it totally depends on the referee and if that place is appropriate.
Yeah.
I'm all for it, bros.
You're all for it.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah,
I think
it does eliminate a lot of obvious. I mean, the stuff with the diving and it does eliminate immediately a lot of issues of just like totally obvious things that were not.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like if a guy says like, oh, say a guy says, oh, I got elbowed in the face, and then we look back in the replay and he got nudged in the rib and he's on the floor grabbing his face. It eliminates those things because like you can't get away with that anymore.
Right.
No.
Right. So,
And if you are, you're gonna be ridiculed
right.
on the world stage,
Right.
Because then every replay is just like it's like, oh, what happened? Did he get hit in the face there? And then you just hear the announcer. It's like, oh no, it looks like he got hit in the leg. Like,
Right. Yeah. So like again, like it adds another layer of kind of security for the referee. But yeah.
Yeah.
I think Semi-VAR.
Semi-VAR.
I have a semi-VAR right now.
You're semi-bar.
But moving on to the winners of the World Cup and France winning the World Cup. So first off, congratulations to France. They had a pretty good World Cup. A lot of people saying they didn't light it up, but I don't think that matters. You win. It doesn't matter. I remember the 1994 Brazil team, not that great.
Yeah.
If you were to ask me, they won on penalties at the end of the final. Who cares?
Yeah.
You win the World Cup. It doesn't matter how you win it. You won it.
Yeah. I think in the games they had where they kind of needed to make a statement, they made a statement, but they didn't in the smaller, when they playing smaller teams, they didn't necessarily were like, oh my gosh, with the lineup they had, they should have been playing some, I think, more kind of fluid football. But yeah, I agree. I think they showed up and they scored a lot of goals in some games. Some games they didn't. They were just they were average.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you win a World Cup. Who really gives a shit?
Yeah, and of course it has to be in 2018 that even people are bringing up the fact it's yo, look back on past World Cups too, and I'm sure there are people that were a majority of one color were on a team,
Yeah, and that brings up the issue that we're going to talk about now is a lot of people now looking back at this France team and saying these guys aren't French, or some people are. So it's funny because a lot of if you don't know. A lot of the French national team is comprised of people of African descent. I think
I think it's something along the lines of 20 out of the 23.
There's a graphic out there
that they have some form of African lineage within their heritage, right? I got into a Facebook argument with a troll, and so we're part of all these groups on Facebook that talk about soccer or whatever, and some guy had the audacity to put up it was kind of sort of like a meme, but not really. It was a picture of all of the French players from the World Cup final in their lineup, and it had the flag of each of the countries that they're from, quote unquote, above them. And all of a sudden, the guy wrote some caption about oh yeah, France didn't win the World Cup. They're all Africans, blah blah blah. And I'm so my comment was, please stop perpetuating this bullshit. Who the fuck are you to say who isn't French? He comes back at me with, no, these are just the countries that they were born in. And I look back at him and I went through and I looked at every single player and listed every single place of birth for each player. I was like, Pogba, born in France. N'Golo Kante,
I think
born in Paris.
Out of the 23, 2 of them were not born in France.
Yeah.
They all have African heritage, but they're all French-born players.
And that brings up the question, who are you to say what is and isn't French? Even if none of them were born in France, but they were raised in France and feel French, who the hell are you to say that France, they're not French?
Yeah. No, it definitely brings up an interesting argument, right? Especially in a time now, we've had the Trumps coming out recently and saying that immigration is bad for a country, and then France goes on and wins the world's biggest stage with immigrant. They came from immigrant families, right? But they are born in the country. It really is kind of setting up perfectly with just all the tensions that are occurring throughout the world. But
this would be the same thing if the United States wins the World Cup and they're oh, none of these players are American.
Right.
They're from England, Mexico.
Right.
No, shut up.
Yeah. No, and I think Trevor Noah, he actually had a good segment on this where he describes it as a lot of people are saying, a lot of African people are saying, yes, Africa has just done something great. And that's okay. Right, because people are comprised of different nationalities, and he made a joke about that. And I think the French ambassador wrote him a note back saying, this is very disrespectful. These are all French-born players. We accept them as being French because they are born here. Blah blah blah. And Trevor made a good point of saying, yes, you can be French, but you can also be African. You can be they are French. They are French. But they can also be African, and you can celebrate both aspects of these people's heritages. It's not just who in the world is just from one place, right?
No one. We all came
skin
from
color or not. Brendan, you're our token white guy on the show, I'd say. But even you're not just comprised of you are an American, right?
No.
You have heritages from all over the world.
Yeah.
So it's not to say that these guys are French or not French or African or not African is just disrespectful to who they are as people.
Right. No one just sprouts out of the ground in a country and is this is the only place my people.
I am American.
Everybody on this planet came from somewhere else at some point.
Right.
I have Lebanese heritage.
A descendant of an Aborigine. But yeah.
You know what I mean? I consider myself Brazilian American. I consider myself 100% Brazilian.
Right.
I consider myself 100% American.
Right.
We're not like some equation that you try to
Right.
like puzzle together. Like, oh, are you more African than you are French?
Right.
No. So basically, I think the biggest takeaway is don't take away the fact that they aren't like you can't look at this and go, oh, these players aren't French. This is Africa's World Cup, and
Yeah.
you also can't look at them and go, they are only French, and we only accept them because they won the World Cup,
Yeah.
which is what it seemed like the
That was a
ambassador.
good attempt at a French accent.
I could trust them all. They are only French because they won the World Cup.
That's Austrian, dude. I
That's
think
like
that's
Arnold
more Austrian.
Schwarzenegger.
Okay, well, I tried.
Yeah, you didn't. No.
Sorry. But either way, you know what I mean? Like, it's just not fair to say that, oh, just because these guys have African heritage that they're not French. And you know who I put the blame on? I put the blame on France. Who told them to invade a majority of Africa about 150 years ago?
Like, yeah, right. Like, these guys are. Trevor Noah made a good joke about that. Like, these guys are all French. I wonder why. Like, yeah, France just fucking took over
This
their
isn't
land.
like some guy from New Zealand going, you know what? I'm going to go move to France
Yeah,
for no
right,
reason.
right.
This is legitimately like France's fault. They decided they
Right.
wanted to conquer the continent of Africa, basically.
Yeah.
And now you get people who
Right.
immigrate to your country because they can now speak French because of what you did.
Right, and I think that this is also a really cool time for France because France has been dealing with a long time now with like the anti-Muslim, not being French, basically Nazism, right? And to see now their nation being represented at the World Cup by players that are Muslim, right? Like half of their lineup Muslim, not the typical French person, right, that you would think as a Nazi French guy. To see them kind of bring so much joy to the country, it was awesome. It's just like, shut the fuck up. They are French. This is France. We are a diverse culture.
But do you know what's even funnier about that, though? If you look at the 98 French squad that won the World Cup, they weren't French either.
Yeah, no.
Like,
yeah.
people would, before Zidane won the World Cup, he was Algerian. For a lot of people, Zidane's still Algerian.
Yeah.
But for the French people, he won the World Cup. He's God.
Yeah.
He's God.
Yeah.
You had players like Robert Pires. You had Patrick Vieira, born in Senegal, one of France's all-time best players. You have players that were like clearly not quote unquote French, but you celebrate them as French because they won a World Cup.
Because they did something good and positive for you.
Which is crazy because in between the 20 years of France's World Cup wins, how did it get to this point again where the world news outlets in France and all the places are saying, oh, they're not French, they're African.
Yeah.
Like, get out of here.
Yeah.
Nationalism, bro, it's on the rise.
Yeah. No. Yeah. It's good. It's good to see this as an example of kind of a shut up to people that are overtly nationalistic.
Yeah, fuck those guys.
And like being nationalistic in a bad way.
In a bad way, right.
It's one thing to be nationalistic. You can like have a lot of pride for both of your countries. Yeah. I will wear an American flag on July 4th. I'm very happy to do so. But if it's Brazil's in the World Cup or if it's like Brazil's Independence Day, like, you know what I mean? Like you can celebrate both.
Right.
Yeah.
We are not like people who think that it's mutually exclusive that if you're from one country, you can't be from another.
Yeah.
That's horseshit.
Yeah.
I think that's enough of a rant on that one. But I want to ask a question, guys. After watching a lot of the World Cup, one of the biggest things that we kind of previewed was whether or not Fox was going to kind of ruin the World Cup. So my question to you is, do you think that Fox Sports, with their coverage of the World Cup, did they kind of ruin it for us in America?
So I'm going to be totally honest, and I said this a few podcasts ago. I have not watched much Fox broadcasting. And that is because I watched one Fox broadcast, I think the opening game or the game after the opening game, and it was so bad that I just switched to Telemundo, and I didn't go back. Every single game that I watched was on Telemundo, even on my phone. I didn't even have the spot. I just opened up the NBC app because they were showing the Telemundo version. So for me, yeah, it sucked because I only watched one of them, and that was enough for me to be like, I don't want to listen anymore. So Telemundo, got a lot of excitement out of that. So yeah, is my answer.
I guess it was definitely a bummer to hear like the stupid statistics even up until the final game. Like just like I can't stand that shit. It's just like you're creating statistics that have no value to anything happening in the game, like other than superstition pretty much, I feel like.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, I guess I don't care enough to hear what the people say to enjoy the game, I guess, sometimes.
Yeah.
At least
just watch it.
in this World
Yeah.
Cup, that's the case. Like, I just kind of tune out and just kind of watch the players. But that's not to say when there is a good announcer, I'm way more tuned in.
Yeah.
So subconsciously, I'm sure it probably affected me, but like subconsciously, I wouldn't be like, yo, I'm watching this on Telemundo.
Yeah.
So
No, I totally get it. Like, you don't necessarily... And we talked about this in the Fox specific podcast we had of, like, might be different if the USA were in it and you had to take it back.
That's true.
Right? Like, it adds a totally different perspective on the game.
Yeah, I think the saving grace that Fox had was that the World Cup was just amazing. The games almost spoke for themselves in a way.
That's true.
Because of how each game was
Can you imagine if the games were boring?
Yeah. Like,
Then you would have really. Then I would have really noticed it.
Yeah, absolutely. Because they would have just been, like, filling space with the words.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank God that this World Cup was good, because I think that, exactly my point, man. I think that if there was a boring World Cup and each game was not very fun, I think Fox would have would have gone downhill.
I have a question
real
for you,
fast.
Louis, because you are adamant against Fox, but you also understand Spanish completely. Why not just switch to Telemundo?
I didn't know if I had Telemundo,
Oh, okay.
and I knew that I had Fox.
Okay. Cool.
And so for me, it was almost just like, I also wanted to experience it because I knew this is something we would discuss at some point. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to force myself through all of these Fox broadcasts, despite the fact that probably every 15 minutes, if I was watching a game and Stuart Holden was commentating, I said, shut the fuck up, Stuart Holden, at least like every 15 minutes. I kind of put myself through it because I wanted to give him a fair shake of being like, did they do a good job? Truthfully, I think that their in-studio analysis was weird. It didn't make any sense.
Yeah, I mean, that you don't even have to listen to you don't even have to listen to an announcement. Like, if they are in studio and not at the stadium, mute it.
Yeah.
You're better off doing that.
And so I think my verdict was they didn't ruin the World Cup only because the World Cup was so phenomenal by itself.
Yeah.
I think that there's a lot that they need to figure out, because I think they also have the rights to the next World Cup, which is very ridiculous.
Well, hopefully the U.S. will be in it and there'll be a little bit more of an effort, right?
Yeah, that's the other part, right? If the U.S. makes it, they will have a more concerted effort into really trying to back it and doing things a little bit differently. But yeah, overall, it was like that kind of thing where it's like commentating and like coverage kind of adds a little bit of spice to the game. And I'm just so glad that the World Cup wasn't boring, because then it really would have bombed.
Yeah, big time.
Absolutely.
But before we get to our final news item, our final talking point, we just want to announce that all of the people who bought TVs in Belgium from that chain that we talked about a couple episodes ago got free televisions.
Yeah,
I wish I was Belgium.
What was the name of the place again? It was something so cool.
Kreffel.
Yeah.
So Kreffel
got bought.
Kreffel did get a little fucked, but they did. They did give away those free TVs.
Let's
so
go.
congrats if you're Belgian and you bought those TVs, and if you're Dries Mertens' friends who he didn't want to buy TVs for, but you got free TVs anyway, congrats.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. And tying in with that, Belgium, Croatia, we see these few nations that did not win World Cups but came home to open bus stop parades, right? And what does that kind of tell us is here in America, open bus stop parades are for winners, right? Champions, that's where you see people.
For fucking winners no, you're right.
And
Only for the winners.
So it's so awesome to see these countries who still didn't win anything, but who their players brought them so far and brought them so much joy in the competition, come back to that type of reception.
Right.
I thought that was awesome. Like, it did contradict with my mentality a little bit, too, because I'm like, yeah, I mean, it is a little weird. Like, you didn't really win anything, but when you take a step back and think about this only happens every 4 years. You have to kind of take it for what it is. If your team has never really been that far, and in the case of Belgium and Croatia being in a World Cup final, that's amazing. No one thought that they would be there.
To give you an idea, Croatia was founded as a country in 1992.
Yeah.
They were part of a bigger country before, but Croatia they started independently being a country in 1992. And they made it to a World Cup final. And when they got home, 500,000 people, which is 15% of their population. They only have a 4 million population in Croatia.
Yeah.
15% of all of the people living in this country went to Zagreb to meet and greet these World Cup finalists.
Yeah.
And
they like partied through the night, and it was crazy, man.
it was absurd.
Yeah.
And so it's really interesting to contrast that with what happened to the Brazil team. The Brazil team lands in Brazil, and a group of delinquent assholes show up and throw rocks at the bus.
Yeah.
Because
totally different culture.
and it's
Get the fuck out, you losers!
it's a completely different culture. And while I despise the fact that people did that, because I think Brazilians should welcome back their World Cup players with open arms happily, it's the Brazilian supporter culture in that country, and it just it's disgusting. But it shows the contrasting cultural differences. And to touch a little bit more on Croatia, I think that it was phenomenal. They played their absolute hearts out.
Yeah, man. I mean, even in that final, like when they got scored on, you could see they were just three men closing down on a ball. Like they didn't give up for anything.
No,
like,
that
they
first
were-
Modric.
hustling.
Oh my god, dude,
So
that guy is a
good, dude.
workhorse.
I wish someone could give Luka Modric another 2 trophies
Yeah.
to
I mean,
be like,
dude,
you're
he
the
played
best player of
so-
the tournament 3
He
times
played
over.
center, defensive mid, and attacking mid, like all in one lineup,
Yep.
right? Like this guy's just crazy. But yeah, I mean, dude, you could see that it meant to. That's when we talk about like what does the sport mean to players when you want to see players put it out on the line. You could see it. That's the perfect example. I would show
Of
that
the whole
to
team.
I would show that to any team that if I ever coach in soccer, I would show them that game and show them like this is what it means. You go down a goal, it's an unfair call. Whoever, they don't give a shit. They're chasing the ball 3 men down every single time, right?
And that first half, I felt that Croatia was going to score just because they were
And
putting
I thought
on the
that
pressure.
if they could get up one, they would have won the game.
Yeah. But you know what's hard? They literally played 3 120-minute games
Yeah.
prior to this.
Exactly.
And you run out of legs.
Right.
You will. Like
Yeah.
you're playing.
Plus, it's a team where like that. I mean, the French team they were playing. Yeah, they
Depth.
weren't playing amazing, but they have guys where you don't need to play amazing.
They're clinical.
Yeah.
If they
Like-
have an off game, they're clinical.
Not to bring the whole stats into the thing, but like Giroud didn't get a goal.
Yeah, he
Giroud didn't attempt a shot at goal during the whole tournament.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
But you know what it is? People have been saying that
And he was
that
playing
was,
9, right? Don't
Yeah.
go to score.
But you know what it is? For people who don't necessarily understand soccer, he did his role
I guess
well.
so, yeah.
Because
Yeah.
you know what it was?
Yeah, he wasn't going to be their leading scorer.
No. And the thing is, I saw...
And I mean, they did win the World Cup. So
Right.
so
So who cares? I've been seeing a lot of Americans be like, wow, I can't believe this guy's a striker for France. Like, you got to understand something. Every player on that France squad played their role to a perfection.
Yeah.
Without N'Golo Kante, Pogba wouldn't be the player that
Right.
he was during the tournament. Without Pogba, N'Golo Kante wouldn't be the player that he was in the tournament. Without Giroud, none of those French players would have scored. Because you know what was happening? The ball was coming up to Giroud. He was holding it up, waiting for players to show up, and laying it off. So it's another just one of those funny things where people kind of get lost in these like statistical topics when it's like it wasn't like Giroud took 30 shots on goal and missed 30.
Yeah.
He didn't take any at all because he knew his role in the team.
That wasn't the game he was playing. Absolutely.
Fair enough.
No, but that's still it's still like your striker. You'd expect him to get a shot on goal. That's not like a shame on you for saying that stat. Like that's an amazing stat because your striker is not playing the role of the quote unquote striker.
Yeah,
your striker is not taking a shot on net. That's unheard of. Right. So yeah, no, I mean it's so many storylines from this World Cup, but I think overall it was just amazing to see all of the joy that it brought. Different cultures, different people, even teams that were out in the group stages, right? The Panamas that got a goal and their fans that was it. That's all they needed, right? So it was a great World Cup. I think looking back, it's going to be one that it will be hard to top. Honestly.
Yeah.
And honestly, I hope that bashing Qatar makes it a really good World Cup. That's a good trend.
So here's what we're gonna do for every episode for the next 4 years. We're gonna
let's go.
make fun of Qatar in the hopes that it'll be a phenomenal World Cup.
Absolutely.
Welcome to another episode of Culture FC. First off, fuck you, Qatar. We're not excited for your World Cup.
There we go.
But who knows? Maybe we'll be there in 4 years. Maybe do some
who knows?
coverage
Absolutely.
in Qatar. Hopefully we
Yeah.
can get that far. If you guys listening, if you could share this podcast, get more people involved, get us to Qatar.
Yes, that's the hashtag. Get us to
Qatar. Yes,
Yeah,
I like
I
this.
did.
Road to Qatar.
Yeah,
we're
road to
already
Qatar.
going.
We're going.
Yeah,
Get us to
road to
Qatar.
Qatar.
That's the new one.
Absolutely.
But yeah, no, overall, love this World Cup. Do you guys have any final thoughts on like any other comments you want to make about things that happened in the World Cup?
Loved seeing Eden Hazard as a DJ in Belgium. That was a 10 out of 10 moment for me. Just like seeing these guys.
Love seeing Luka Modric pick up the kid
The
with Down
Down
syndrome
syndrome.
and bring him right onto stage.
10 out of 10 moment.
10 out of
Absolutely
10.
love
that.
Great guy.
Recently, let's see. Loved seeing Neymar make fun of his own
Did he?
fouls. Yeah.
Yeah.
He has his Instituto Neymar, which is like his institute in Brazil that his institute in Brazil that he helps kids in
It's a
situations.
non-profit soccer organization.
He shot a selfie with some kids at there and was like, all right, let's do the Neymar challenge, and they all rolled over and so that was cool seeing him make fun of himself, and he knows what it meant. So.
And it was cool because he also someone interviewed him and was like, oh, like, how are you taking all of this like criticism about your diving? And his response was what I've been saying from the get-go. Like, he looked at it and was like, I'm a dribbler. I am the kind of guy who I'm trying to take my defender out of the game with my dribbles. I'm usually faster than the people defending me. A lot of times they are going to hit me and I will go down. It hurts. I'm not doing this because I enjoy it. I'm not doing it because I like getting kicked at. I'm doing it because it hurts. I have to go through 4 to 5 hours after every single game of ice baths and icing all of my like my whole body because of it. And he was in good spirits, so I'm just happy that he didn't allow it to like
affect him too much,
because like that's what some people who really understand it know, that he wasn't. Like, you can say he's a diver, say whatever he is, but that's how he is. That's his game. Yeah. And I just loved how he just responded with that.
Yeah, and it was really cool. We actually had, I'm going to shout someone out, Ian Santos Meeker on Facebook sent us a message, this whole long post explaining kind of why Neymar dives. And he wasn't necessarily just backing divers, but he was giving an explanation for both sides. So thank you, Ian, for sending us that. But he made the same points as, like, as a player, if you're always getting attacked for being a kind of like flair type of having a flair style, you have to find a way to protect yourself. And if falling over or trying to sell a foul is going to potentially lessen the following blows, then you're going to do that. I mean, you don't, at the end of the day, we're humans. We don't want to get hit and beat up. So, shout out Ian. That was a really cool, insight that he gave us. And we always like hearing stuff. So if you guys have any thoughts, shoot us a message.
Right. I think that's, probably enough for this episode.
Yeah. I think we covered a lot of the highlights of the World Cup, and I don't know. I don't really have anything else to say. To be honest.
It's tough to say goodbye.
Yeah,
I know.
It's been sad, but it's been good. I think it's cut a lot of the summer bullshit that I'm normally stuck in of like transfer market stuff, which like is perfect. And now just the seasons are getting geared up to start again. And
yeah, we're about 3 weeks out from the start of the Premier League season. So
yeah, our teams are currently in the United States, or they're on their way.
The MLS is back again.
The youth team is back.
Yeah, pretty much.
A lot of the guys are not.
The MLS is going to their All-Star break in about 2 weeks, but after that they'll be back full force till the end of the season. So that'll be good to keep an eye on as well. And
absolutely.
Yeah, no, let's roll to the next season. I'm excited.
Absolutely.
So there you have it, guys. Another awesome episode in the books. Let us know what you think. Do you think that we made some good points? Do you agree with any of the things we said? Let us know in the comments below. Send us a DM. Send us a Facebook message. We really always like to hear from the people who are listening to the show, because it shows that A, that people are listening to the show, and B, we genuinely like to have discussion. Like we said, subscribe to our podcast. Check out our YouTube channel. Follow us on Instagram. Really appreciate it. And lastly, hashtag get us to Qatar. Let's build this up. Let's get the three of us to the Qatar World Cup in 4.5 years, I shall say. Let's get us there. We want to be there. We want to be on the ground for you listeners.
Yes. Interviewing Neymar directly.
Yeah, that's what it would be.
Oh, God. If that's my life in 4 years, I could probably die happy.
Yeah. Well, don't die before.
No, don't die before. I'm sorry. Anyway, hashtag get us to Qatar. You guys have a great week. We will catch you next week.